Welcome, D20 players. Thanks for coming to the live stream tonight. We're going to be looking at what makes a Rockstar player on a tabletop RPG. I've been playing now since '79, so I know really well what makes a bad player because I've been that for a lot of those years. Hopefully, I've been a good player for some of those years. And I've DN'd for maybe thousands of players, and some just stand head and shoulders above the rest. So what is it that makes that? So while we have everyone filing in here, let's take a look at some news that's coming up. So we have Gen Con next week. Let's look at what I just ran, though. I just ran Sochcanth. That was a lot of fun. We ran Sochcanth, the last caverns of Sochcanth, the upper levels, maybe about 3 months ago when you could first grab it. And before that, I ran the old school Sochcanth, the 1983-84 version of it. And I like what they did with the new one. They kind of tightened it up a little bit. One interesting effect it had, though, on the lower levels, by tightening it up a little bit and removing some of the extra stuff that wasn't down there, it made it a little bit easier to find all the doors and get back to the center as you have to do in that adventure. Um, but I do like the work they did that. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I think the players had a good time. And Drillenza was great. I beef up the damage I do for monsters a lot, and she was, I think, challenge rating, I think 14, 15, 16, something like that. Proficiency bonus, I think a +6, maybe +5. So I was multiplying her damage by 1.6 or 1.5, and it put the fear of God in the players. Is really fun. Had one player make a DC 26 concentration check to keep their spell. All right, so let's start looking at, let's see, what else we got coming up. Next week, well, later tonight, I'm going to run this one, Vecna, Chapter 3. This one is where the players go to Spelljammer, basically to the astral plane. Vecna Adventure, I don't know who's played the Vecna Adventure. It hasn't been that strong. A lot of their recent adventures haven't been that strong. The encounters are way too easy, by far way too easy. So I beefed them up a lot and changed it around so the agency is with the players. Let them drive the action. They're not just going on the errands for other characters. I hate that. And it's easy to twist that around, though, and change that around in the adventures. So definitely do that if you're running it. I think your players will really like it. All right, let's talk about what makes a great Rockstar player. And I have this list that I copied from Gary Gygax in the first edition Player's Handbook, Mike Carr from B1, Kelsey Dion from Shadow Dark, Ben Milton from Knave, and others. And really, the most important thing is have fun. As a player, you need to be having fun, and that'll shine through. With the other players, they'll enjoy being around you and having fun at the table with you. So prop each other up, play smart, play fast, play furious, and explore, explore, explore. So let's take a look at this picture on the cover here. This kind of like shows good players. They're planning their next adventure. They got their map out. They're exploring, taking all the treasure they can take. They're dragging the monsters from a different area into this area to make sure they don't have wandering monsters happening to them. So that's all good planning, good playing. And now if we look back at here, so assist the game master, show up on time, learn the rules, keep session notes, draw maps, pay attention when it's not your turn, be ready for your turn, have rules references ready, communicate short and long-term plans with the DM. This being ready on your turn is a huge part. It really makes some players stand out. When you're playing a game that's like 5th edition that takes a long time on each turn, or can, if people aren't prepared, someone who knows what they're going to do when it comes to their turn just launches into the action and says, okay, I do this, this, and this, and I'm done. They just stand out. And the same thing can happen with other games too, not to this great of extent, because they don't have as many things as you can do on a turn as in 5th edition. I think Pathfinder would probably be pretty bad too. There's so much you need to kind of like think about how you're going to use your actions. The worst part is when you get a player that it comes to their turn and they're like, wait, what's going on? Like they weren't even paying attention. And that's pretty rare to have a player who's so ready on their turn. It's like they surprise you with how ready they are. So be that player. Create your character, work with the group to make a PC that meshes with the campaign setting and tone. Nothing worse than you know, just kind of standing out in a bad way in a campaign, unless the whole campaign's like that. And that's where you need to work with a group and see what the group's want to do with the campaign. Give your player character distinctive features to make them memorable, but don't worry about coming up with a huge elaborate backstory. Their their story should be made with their adventures, right? They should have a little bit of backstory, and it can drive a little bit of conflict in the campaign, a little bit of goals in the campaign. So that's good to have, but don't make it way elaborate, because we'll see in the end, characters will die. Play your character, immerse yourself in the fiction. Describe your PC's actions in first or third person based on their perceptions and motivations, but avoid creating significant inter-party conflict. Don't be the player who's just causing conflict to cause conflict, unless that's something you guys have all agreed to ahead of time. Think outside the sheet. So if you're immersed in the world, you'll be thinking of everything going on around you. And you'll be thinking of every way your character can interact with this world that they're in. And it's not just with what's on their sheet. They can come up with all sorts of imaginative ways to interact with the world. And, games that are simpler, like Shadow Dark, is this way. There's nothing on your sheet. Everything you do has to be pretty much interacting with the world. You can swing a sword, you can cast spell, but there's not, you know, 10 different character features that you could choose from on your characters. That really, if you get to play a game like that, that'll kind of bring that out in you, I think, a little bit as a player. Another one is scheme. So use your psychology, magic, allies, equipment, environment to overcome obstacles. I think a lot of fifth edition has done it to players where they just kind of are along for the ride. They're like, you know, on Pirates of the Caribbean, they go from scene to scene, never really challenged, don't have to think about what they're doing. So definitely, if you can, if you're running an adventure, try to take out the linearness of it and give it to the players so that they can do whatever they want. And that'll engender this kind of psychology and using everything they can to overcome obstacles. I really like big set piece encounter adventures for that kind of thing, like Against the Giants, a couple of the sample adventures for Shadow Dark that way. You can kind of retool Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which I think is a cool campaign. You can retool it so the players can go multiple directions. Uh, I've kind of retooled Vecna so the players can go multiple directions. And Shadow Dark is huge that way because players can't just overcome any fight. So win fights before they begin by rigging things in your favor, avoid conflicts when you don't have the upper hand, combat's not balanced for you. And let me go to a couple that I got in the Discord here. The first one is Cornelius Matt said this, be enthusiastic, show up on time. Yeah, part of having fun. Show up on time for sure. If you're not having fun, you probably want to find a different group. Know your character. So knowing the rules, learning the rules, knowing everything your character can do, playing your character, that's important. Don't argue with the DM. This is from Ryan. I was the worst at this. When we first started playing, we started playing in 1979, and I was 9 years old, and my friends were all 9 years old. And me and a good friend would like alternate campaigns. And both of us kind of got started playing war games. And so we would fight about the rules like you wouldn't believe. And luckily, I got that out of my system pretty young. And now I try to know all the rules as thoroughly as possible, but I never, ever correct another player at the table or correct the DM at the table. The DM, I'm sure, can find or catch other players doing things wrong. And too often, there's things players have that that will let them like break the rules. I'm trying to think of an example. If they're trying to sneak and they have armor on and the player says, oh, you forgot to roll with disadvantage, maybe they have some feature that gives them advantage and it's offsetting. And you just kind of slow down the game by asking that question. And it doesn't really benefit a whole lot if you catch little simple mistakes. Who cares, right? So just play your character, be ready for your turn, and don't slow the game down by questioning other players. That's a hard one to learn. It took me a lot of years to learn it. I was a bad rules lawyer at the start. I pride myself on knowing the rules, but never volunteering unless I'm asked. Play only your character. So that's kind of what we're talking about. Avoid telling other players how to play their PCs. Don't question what they can do. and that'll make the game go immensely faster too. Drive the story. So set your short, your long-term goals, make your own fun, seek out adventure, be active in deciding where to go and what to do next, like big picture wise, not necessarily, oh, we're going to turn left here or right here. Let's have a debate about it. But big picture, drive the story, ask questions. Information is the lifeblood of the game, so get as much of it as possible. Search rooms, search the fallen, learn languages, interrogate prisoners, consult sages, follow monster tracks back to their lairs, etc. I can't tell you how many times people have had a wandering monster encounter and the monster's got some treasure in its lair and they just don't bother tracking it back. Um, Prepare to die. So embrace your PC's death when it happens. And that can be a hard one for some players. Some players just take it in stride and like, cool, I'm making a new character. And some really play it out epically and heroically. You want to be that player that does that, not the player that whines about it. Losing a PC can be painful, but it makes for great stories, lets you try out new characters, can thrust the party into unexpected situations. And then the last one I have that I like from all the things I've seen there is avoiding rules, loopholes, and exploits, etc. So a lot of players like to, really optimize their characters, and there's nothing wrong with that until you found the thing that beats D&D. Until you found the thing that makes your character so good, the other characters don't even need to be there. And the other players might feel like, oh, I'm just going to waste my time being here. When you find that, work with the DM and say, hey, we need to tone this thing down. It's just too powerful. Definitely be that kind of an optimizer. Optimizing is fine, but don't think that you want to win D&D. So that's my list. That's what I got from Gary and Mike, Carr, Kelsey, Ben. I'm going to take a look at those. Does anyone have any comments of their own, the things that they think make for the best players? I want to see those comments. Amit says also there's probably some differences between in-person games and online games. So that's for sure. Online games can cause a lot of distraction. A lot of players can get to their turn. Um, make sure you're on it with the mute button. I can't tell you how many times I've been like, you're on mute probably. So watch out for that. What other things in game could, like an online game would be something important? So let's look at where I got these things from. If you're on X, jump onto the YouTube and you can comment and what's the best, what makes for the best players in a tabletop role-playing game. Let's look at B1. So let me share this tab. This was the first adventure I ever had. This came in the blue box and it was the Mike Holmes edition of D&D. This was written by Mike Carr. I think Mike was part of the group with Arneson that kind of joined up with D&D in Lake Geneva in the early days. If you are a historian, let me know, correct me on that. And I think Mike Carr is still playing D&D. I need to get him on an interview sometime. That'd be really fun. So this was a introductory adventure for being a DM and for being a player. And it had some notes for the Dungeon Master, things to do for the Dungeon Master. Then it also had some pre-generated characters on the back. Come back here to the back. You had magic users and rogues and such. And he had tips for the players. So let's take a look at these. Mike Carr's tips. Be organized. Keep accurate records of your character. Always keep in mind that Dungeon Master is the moderator of the game. Be prepared to accept his decision as final. Like I said, don't even argue. If they ask you what a rule is, you should be ready. You should have the answer. Whenever I'm playing as a player, when it comes to my turn, I just say I'm doing something. Like, hey, there's this hall on fire. I'm going to run down that hall on fire and try and get to the other side and jump across that opening. And the DM looks at me like, are you sure you want to do that? I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And then they will tell you what the DC is and you just do it. Go for it. Cooperate with your fellow players. Work together when adventuring. There's in the Player's Handbook, the first edition of Player's Handbook, there's a whole section on the amount of planning that they used to do for their adventures. Be neither too hasty or too sluggish when adventuring. Avoid arguing. Be on your guard. Don't be overly cautious, but be advised that some non-player characters can try to hoodwink you. Treat any hirelings or henchmen fairly. Andrew's got a question. What do you think about players strategizing, metagaming mid-combat? I hate it. I really do hate it. And it's hard as a player, right? Because you're like, especially if you're an experienced player, you're thinking, let's say there's a combat going on and the monsters are perfectly grouped together for you to do a shatter in the middle of them or something like that. And then one of the other players goes before you and they move right into the middle of that shatter spell. I'm quiet and I just kind of adjust my plans. And it makes the game go so fast, because there's no real time in a real combat. That's part of immersing yourself in the fiction. There's no real time in real combat to have that kind of discussion. You can have that discussion after the combat, say, hey, you know, watch out for if there's a group of monsters, I might try and hit them with a spell. And that kind of is more in character that way too, I think. So I would definitely be quiet, not strategize, not metagame mid combat. You can definitely do things in character like, hey, go get that guy. Oh, drop a fireball over here. We need help, or something like that. I think that makes perfect sense. But that'd be my advice, to have a fast, fun game and not bog it down for the other players. Okay, back to, we're looking at my card stuff. Know your limits. Your party may not be a match for every monster you encounter. I'm going to go over my DM stuff, which is the same, like the opposite, not the opposite, but the counterpoint to the player stuff. And this is important as a DM, to not also make it all so that the party can encounter anything and fight anything. A lot of the current 5th edition hardcovers, the encounters are so easy. It feels like they're trying to tell a story and there's some combat in there, but there's no chance you'll die. And I hate that. That feels horrible. Um, Use your head. Many of the characters' goals in the game can be accomplished through the strength of arms or magic, but others demand common sense and shrewd judgment, as well as logical deduction. Yeah. D&D is a role-playing game, and the fun of the game comes in playing your character's role, take on your character's persona, immerse yourself in the game, enjoy the fantasy element and the interaction between your fellow players and the dungeon master. That's, I think, the key right there. Immerse yourself in that world. Don't pull yourself out of that immersion to strategize necessarily mid combat or tell other people what to do. And you'll have a fast, fun game. You really will. Now let's look in the player's handbook. So this famous picture here of the magic mouth and the dwarves descending down into the darkness. I think there might have been a spider in this, in a better version of it. Okay, so they have this section here on successful adventures. And few players are so skillful at fantasy role-playing games as to not benefit from advice. And I always take advice and look for more. They, this was the days when people would come over to Gary's house like every day and want to play. And there's different groups of parties and different characters. And he talks about them planning ahead of time to get their group together and be ready when the adventure started. Let's just hit some of the highlights in the top paragraphs here. Most common underground adventure. First, get in touch with all those who will be included in the adventure. And we can do this nowadays if you're playing online, with like Discord or other groups, or if you're playing in person, you can have a Discord group set up to talk amongst yourselves, talk amongst the other players, to set an objective for the adventure. Once the objective has been established, consider how well the party playing will suit the needs which it has engendered. Can you accomplish the goals? Are you well balanced? Can you cover that? You got every class in the party basically. Cooperation amongst party members. Oh, and they use henchmen a lot and men at arms a lot, and we don't do that as often nowadays. But there's a lot of emphasis on that. Cooperation amongst party members is a major key to success, particularly when the characters are relatively low level. Later, when they're 9th, 10th, or even higher, it'll be slightly different. Each character has a selection of equipment. So here, and they were big on encumbrance, they'd be careful about making sure they had a distribution of someone has a 10-foot pole, someone has a crowbar, someone has rope. You kind of spread that amongst yourselves. And I've started playing in my home games with actually the variant encumbrance, which is, I think it's 5 times your strength score instead of 15 times your strength score. So people with an 8 strength can't carry around, what would it be? It'd be 8 strength to be 40, 60 pounds. No, it'd be 120 pounds, which is ridiculous, right? An 8 strength, you're carrying 120 pounds around adventuring. So it tones it down to 40 pounds. That makes a huge difference. So a lot of character builds, unfortunately, have to kind of tweak what they carry, right? If you're like an 8 strength charisma based hexblade, that heavy armor you're wearing might be too heavy. You might not be able to move very fast in it. Um, so they had that. At the same time, preparations for the expedition are underway. Each player is to see that his or her character has made proper preparations as well. Henchmen, um, securing what they leave behind, having a will. With everything just about all set to go, a few more touches will be of great help. So planning your formations in a group. I mean, this is intense. This is the kind of stuff we do for the D&D Open when we have the characters ahead of time. Speaking of that, we'll talk about the D&D Open, which is coming up next week at Gen Con. Okay, then a word about mapping. Map's very important because it helps assure that the party will be able to return to the surface. Minor mistakes, not very important. So I haven't done much lately adventuring where you needed a map, but I did it in Sojkanth. And like I said, the old Sojkanth was harder than the new Sojkanth because it was more expansive. And mapping was important. It was pretty interesting to see the party get lost, not be able to figure out which way to go to get to the last door, that kind of stuff. When everything's all set, it will take only a very few minutes to organize the group for the adventure. Yeah, so once you show up at the game day, you can get right into playing. Your referee will certainly appreciate this. For his or her enjoyment comes from adventuring, not from waiting for a party to get their act together. Yeah, with your objective all set, it will also be a relatively quick trek to the jumping off area. And then he talks about avoiding unnecessary encounters. So you don't have to, and that's where like the big set piece encounter areas is cool, like the giant adventures or things like that. Because you're going to plan it out. You're not going to try and hit every room. You're not going to go to every encounter. You're trying to hit your objectives. If the party becomes lost, the objective must immediately be changed to discovering the way out. Cooperation assumes mutual trust and confidence. They talk a little bit about different alignments, I think. Yeah, intelligent players of evil alignment will certainly be ready to help in order to further their own ends. So much for the Underworld adventure. Most of that was said regarding successful expeditions where also applies to outdoor and city adventures as well. Superior play makes the game more enjoyable for all participants, DMs, and players alike. So through, and the immersion part, I think, is the most important advice. Immerse yourself as if you are that character, and you'll naturally not do too much metagaming when you're doing that. You'll be much more in-game. Okay, let's look at my notes for DMs. So that's what I say, what I and your fellow players expect from you in a game. Basically, the most important part is have fun and show up on time and learn the rules as you go. You don't have to know them all the first time you play, obviously, but learn them as you go and really immerse yourself in the fiction. Now, what's the DM going to be doing? What would I do as a DM? So try and make it fun, try and make it fast, fair, challenging. If it's not challenging, it's just, might as well be reading a bedtime story. Challenging, a lore-filled world full of dangerous monsters, fantastic treasure, and be on the player's side. You don't want the players to feel like you're adversarial, but you want they want to know you're also not taking your foot off the pedal. You're not pitching softballs to them. The monsters, I'll keep the pace brisk and combat pulse pounding. We'll have many opportunities for exploration, social, and combat encounters. It'll be fair and challenging. I'll roll the dice in the open. I like doing that. I'll strive to make impartial and consistent rulings, telegraph danger. It's important as a DM to be fair in not springing danger on the players because they've got all their senses, the characters do, and they should, hear that huge dragon coming. They should smell the burning sulfur. They should know something's about to happen. Even their sixth sense might know something's going to happen. And you need to make sure you kind of telegraph that to them so that they aren't surprised by something their character should have known was coming. Out the damage on the output. So 5th edition monsters are way too weak in the damage they do at high levels, and it's just not very much fun. And you can kind of increase the number of monsters, but then it makes for a slog combat. Instead, I up the damage, and it just really makes the combat scary, but fast still. And high-level characters, you'd be amazed. They can survive pretty much anything you throw at them. Because if they're high level, as long as they're playing, They know the characters, they're playing them well. They'll have death wards going. They'll have other ways that when they get to 0 hit points, they don't die right away. They'll have evasion. They'll have aid spells going. They'll have someone with a healer feat. They'll have a paladin. They'll have a lot of ways that they survive that you won't believe how they get through it. And it lets them really use those last powers they don't get normally used, like when we were fighting Dendar the Night Serpent and the wizard broke his staff of the Magi. That was awesome. Immersive world. I'll make the world a living, reactive, and truly consistent place. Your background, tool, and knowledge proficiencies will grant you extra information. Locations to explore. Locations seeded with treasures, traps, friends, foes, monsters, devices, secrets, problems without obvious solutions. Powder cake situations ready to explode. Multiple routes to most areas. Some adventures that I really love running are by Circe Victory. His adventures are so much fun and so over the top challenging. It's a lot of fun. Fleshed out NPCs. So you want your NPCs to, this last part here, entangled lives, they need to have lots of different entanglements with each other, with the world, with the adventure, with the characters potentially, and that'll make for some real, they'll feel like a living thing. Fleshed out NPCs. NPCs are monsters with personalities, goals, fears, loyalties, and motivations, and entangled lives. Letting you guide the action. Enemy goals, not plots. So each session's outcome should be a surprise to everyone. Yeah, I mean, that kind of speaks for itself. It shouldn't be that the players show up and they're just along for the ride. They should feel like they're driving the action. They decided what was going to happen. They made it happen. Now, you want to have cool things for them to get to do. You don't want it to be like, oh, we're going to go across country for 5 days and have a wandering monster encounter each day, and never is that going to be challenging. That's kind of boring. You want to have cool things, cool locations for them to get to and explore and find and things like that. Letting you guide the action. Yeah, enemy goals not plus. Fewer skill checks. So PCs should usually just succeed when they're doing something. If there's a time pressure, have them roll a check. If there's big negative consequences, have them roll a check. But if they're doing something they're skilled at, just say they did it. A rewarding game. Good treasure. Treasure, I think, is real important. And it should be kind of tied into the world, tied into the characters. And then in real time, I've been playing with this a little bit in Shadow Dark, time passing in the game world about the same pace it's passing in the real world, except during combat or when we agree to jump ahead for resting, travel, downtime, etc. It makes stuff easier to track that way, I think. And it gives a time pressure to the characters. So that's the DM side of things. What are your DM thoughts? Any comments on that? While you guys are thinking of that, let's look into some stuff coming up. I just saw this today, wanted to share it. I've been thinking a lot about what I would change in 5th edition to make it faster. And we got this Nimble, a fast tactical TTRPG free preview. I think it's in backer kit right now. Looks pretty cool. A lot of cool ideas here. I love how fast Shadow Dark is. I like the idea of one action and move. And, there's some stuff in MCDM I really like. And I hope that MCDM second packet will be out soon for the Patreons, and we can try that out. I'll run a game there for that. So I'm looking at all these different rules and saying, okay, if I was going to combine everything that's come in Daggerheart, didn't really have a lot there in Daggerheart that I wanted to pull from, I don't think. But definitely Shadow Dark a lot. And I like this Nimble system here. This looks pretty cool. What would I do for d20play version of 5th edition? I'm going to look at that a little bit more coming up. Then we have D&D at Gen Con. Oh, let's talk about species. I did a lot of videos on all the different character classes and all the changes that the different character classes had. Let me know what you think the best updated character class is and the worst updated character class is. We'll talk about that. And then I also want to talk about species here. So the 10 species in 2024 Player's Handbook, if anything felt mailed in a little bit, this did to me. Remember, we had the very first 2 play tests, we had this information come out with the species. And of course, all the modifiers for ability scores moved to backgrounds, so they don't have those anymore. They have a couple of features, a little bit. Really, a lot of it came from like their latest iteration in Mordekainen or in Fizban's Treasure Dragons, like for the Dragonborn. Let me share this tab. Sorry. So let me zoom in here. So the SMR. So they have the Celestial Revelation, the Inner Radiance. Dragonborn Breath Weapon's better. Definitely better. I don't know about this being able to change it from a cone to a line back and forth. I'd say go with what your dragon type was. Draconic Flight you get. The dwarf, I don't like the speed going to 30 for dwarves and halflings. I liked him being 25. I mean, they got stumpy little legs. They shouldn't be as fast as an elf or a human, I don't think. Dark vision to a range of 120. I like Shadow Dark having no dark vision. I went to mine seeing dark vision go away completely. And there's no different types of dwarves. All dwarves are kind of merged together now into one. That's a little disappointing. The elf drow no longer suffering from sunlight sensitivity. Just put drow back in the Underdark and being the evil elves that they are. I mean, they've made the full transition to being a player race now, with no longer suffering from sunlight sensitivity. So, guess you like drow. There you go. High elf, wood elf, gnome, speed of 30. Don't like that. Should be 25 still. Goliath in the base class, speed of 35. Does a wood elf have 35? I don't know if wood elf has 35 or not. And I know that Goliath needed 35, and they definitely don't need resistance anymore. Do they have it still? Did they get rid of resistance? Because they have resistance to cold and Rime of the Frost Maiden. And I think any species with a resistance, that's too big a strength for a species, I think. Halfling speed of 30 now, and all one set of halflings. No differences. Humans. Resourceful. You get heroic inspiration whenever you finish a long rest. Now, the sad part here is a lot of DMs and or Adventures League just give everyone inspiration at the start of a session. So that's kind of a watered down feature when that's the case. You gain proficiency in one skill. You gain an origin feat of your choice in addition to the one gained at character creation. So 2 origin feats. Then you have orcs, which had to get added, and they have a dark vision of 120. Oh, that's great. And since when were orcs underground? Maybe in Forgotten Realms they were. And they did that, I think, as a race because half elves and half orcs are gone, right? And now what they do is they say, if this is still what was held over from the playtest, you can be any ancestry, any combination of any ancestry you want, and you just pick one of these species to use its traits, and then you can change your appearance to however you want. If you come descending from, some of your descendants are halflings and some are orcs, you can pick if you want to do halfling or orc features, and then describe how you look. So that is what they did. Now, I kind of like how Daggerheart did theirs, where they had each species had 2 features, and you could mix and match. You could take the feature A from any one and feature B from any one, and that's how you could get someone with an ancestry of Goliaths and humans in their family, for example. I kind of like that. So this was done early on, and it feels like they just kind of left it. And boy, if they'd come with a range of 120-foot dark vision for everyone and speed of 30 for everyone, I think I did complain about speed of 30 for everyone. They might have seen some negative input, maybe. Don't know. So there's species. What do you guys think of species? Andrew says, lately, whenever my players make choices that veer away from anything I've prepped, I just bust out Shadow Dark and start rolling on random tables to generate maps, towns, monsters, and NPCs. Yeah. Shadow Dark has some great tables in it. If you don't have Shadow Dark, get Shadow Dark. It's so good. We've had some of the most fun sessions I've ever run rolling on random tables. Yep. Optional rule says Pathfinder 2 did it well, a feature from a build line and a feature from a background. Yeah. Yeah. And I think Tales of the Valiant did something similar. They have heritage. Oh, what is it? They have 2 things. One's your heritage and one's your species like, right? So one's physical and one's upbringing. Kind of makes sense, right? You're gonna have some of that. They went a little overboard on theirs, I think, in Tales of the Valiant. You got a lot of things with resistance to fire. Everyone's gonna be dwarven upbringing to have resistance to fire. Um, so that is the species. We'll see. I think we there's not much more to it. That's what it's going to be. And I like what Tales of the Valiant did with the ability scores, right? So in D&D, they're moving the ability scores to the background. Tales of the Valiant just said, just make it part of the ability score generation, right? Now, one drawback in 2024 D&D, it looks like in the player's handbook, the default setting for backgrounds is going to be that you have three um, abilities, and those are the ones you can increase. And so backgrounds are going to be kind of tied to class as far as optimization goes. Looks like the Dungeon Master's Guide will have an optional thing about customizing backgrounds. That won't even be in the player's handbook, which is unfortunate, I think. It will be interesting to see what Adventures League does from the start, if they'll let you tailor from the start. Okay, now we're going to look at Dungeons and Dragons at Gen Con. Gen Con 2024 coming up. Early Players Handbook sales. Now, I do like how they're doing this, where you have to you buy basically entry to an event. It's free, but that way they can limit how many people get it, and then you don't have to wait in line, from 1 in the morning to try and get your book. I think that's a great way to do that. I think they learned their lesson last year when they had, I think, Lorcana going, and people were waiting the whole con to get Lorcana decks and cards. So you will basically every day. Does it say here how to do it exactly? I think every day at 7 a.m. you can get your. Oh, here's a open link a new tab. Share this one. How to get your player's handbook. Every day at 7 a.m. you can try and get a ticket for it. Then the windows to pick it up are kind of narrow. This is unfortunate for people who are in games during these windows. Thursday 3 to 6, Friday through Saturday. So there's no Sunday. Friday and Saturday. Yeah, just 3 days. It's on sale. It looks like 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. 9 a.m. to noon. So if you're doing the morning slot, anything, you're out of luck there. And here, if you're doing the afternoon slot, you're out of luck. It would be nice if we'd done that a while ago, especially for those who are DMing volunteers, because that's not something you can just drop. Whereas you can drop if you're a player easier. This book cover kind of looks dirty, doesn't it? I mean, it already looks like it's kind of grungy. Those brown colors don't pop necessarily. Anyway, I can't wait to get my hands on it though. It's gonna be pretty neat to see. Although I am getting some hints from some people that they didn't change a whole lot of the spells, kind of like Tales of the Valiant didn't change any of the spells. So all the problematic spells are probably still problematic spells. Let's go back to the overall stuff for 2024 D&D at Gen Con. Got stamps. Not real interested. Although I think there's some news that was it Wayne Reynolds? Is that his name? Is back is doing some of the art. Oh, this one's pretty good for Soth. If that's Soth, that's pretty cool. It could be Strahd. I can't tell. I think that's Strahd. Or just the Headless Horseman. D&D Live happening 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. in the ballroom. Come experience tonight. Fantastic fun. Who's going to be running that one? Giving the cast and some sneak peeks a surprise. Okay. Panel, everything you want to know about the 2024 Players Handbook. I'm going to be going to that. See what we learned there. I'll do like a report back the Tuesday after I get back. And David, if you're wondering where David's at right now, David is gallivanting across Europe. So we'll have him do a slideshow of the ruins in Europe. That'll be fun. D&D Beyond Partner Spotlight. I'm not going to that. Dungeon Master's Guide Tips and Tricks. I'll go to that. See what I learned there and share that. D&D's Digital Tabletop Future Sunday at 1 to 2. Boy, that's going to be. Do I want to start driving home or do I want to go to that? I got tickets for it, so I plan on going to it. Report out what I see there. Panelists include Chris Cow, Kale Stutzman, Latia Chakais as moderator. We'll see how this whole digital tabletop thing goes for D&D. I mean, it's hard playing D&D remotely like we do on BTTs. I think it'll just be just a video game by the time it comes to the digital future tabletop. Partner panel, but we'll always have our in-person games and our hardcovers. Always be able to do that. Panel 50 years of D&D, not going to that. D&D game designer signing is not doing that. D&D Open, so I'm doing the D&D Open. I started playing the D&D Open and the D&D Championships about, like 20 years ago now. And they are so much fun if they do them right. The problem is sometimes they don't share the information ahead of time. I think Goodman Games did one of the best ones we ever did, and this was way back in 4th edition D&D. And they put out the characters that you could have, and there were 7 characters, and there was only 5 players, so you had to pick 5 of the 7. And each of the characters had a really cool background that pertained to the adventures that you're going to be playing. And you kind of would decide, what's the best build a party. And they were 14th level, I believe. And then, of course, there's a multi-round tournament, and it pared down the parties each round, and your backgrounds really mattered. It was really well done. D&D kind of has done that a little bit here and there, where they give you the characters ahead of time, and you can look at the backgrounds and learn some information about the adventure, but they haven't done that yet. I hope they do put something out before we go there. So this one, it says the competitive D&D event returns. Yolandi, the elf queen of Selene, calls for your aid to thwart a new evil presence that has taken root near an infamous old site. Level 4 characters are provided, built with the rules for the 2024 Player's Handbook. What do you bet this infamous old site is the Temple of Elemental Evil? That'd be near Selene. Tournament event takes place over 3 sessions. So the interesting one on this one is that you play all 3 sessions, no matter what. They don't pare you down. So it used to be, however many groups played, pared down to 10 for the semifinals, and then pared down to, I think, 3 for the finals. Was there 10 for the semifinal? There might have been 10 for the finals. But anyway, it got pared down a lot. And for several years in a row, we were like 2nd place. Never made 1st place in the D&D tournament. We made 1st place in the Goodman tournament one year, but never in the D&D Open. So looking forward to playing this one. The prizes are going to be the Player's Handbook, some dice, some miniatures, and if you go 1st place, you'll get the Planescape DM's Vault from Beetle and Grimm's. That'd be nice. I did not run Planescape. Had a bad taste in my mouth after running Spelljammer because it felt like it was just a tour type adventure. It's like, hey, go here, go here, go here, go here. Didn't like it. And Planescape looked like it was more of the same. Vecna looks like kind of more the same, but I'm expanding it, right? The neat thing about Vecna is if you've played for all of 5th edition, you might have played in all the worlds that you'll go to in the Vecna campaign. And it can kind of be a throwback, especially if you had the same players the whole time. It can kind of be a throwback to each of your older campaigns, and you can kind of expand it, put the NPCs there that apply to it. The Wizards 3 play a part in it, and Mordenkainen plays a part in it, but it hasn't shown up in me running it yet. I'm going to wait till I think of the Ravenloft one, and I'm definitely going to use the Castle Ravenloft, not just the House of Death, and put Mordenkainen in there, just like he was when we ran Ravenloft, the Curse of Strahd. Mordenkainen was there for the final battle with Strahd. So that's where I'll have him make the appearance in that. We played in Eberron, we played the Oracle of War, and that's a fantastic campaign. It's a lot. It's 24 adventures, 1 adventure per level, plus 4 epic adventures. So we had a lot of Eberron stuff we could draw from. That'll be a fun one to do. 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide, shipped when available. Monster Manual, shipped when available. They call it the 2024. It's the 2025, right? And D&D Play with Bald Man Games. So I'm going to be DMing 2 games. I'm DMing, what's my adventure? It is a Moonshade adventure called Wild Iris. Make myself big here. There we go. Wild Iris, Moonshade, Promise of Blossoms adventure, character levels 1 through 4. Moonshade adventure is always pretty cool. I always love the Moonshade. So I'm going to be running that twice during the convention for the Adventures League community. And then my schedule, I'm going to be doing the seminars I talked about. I'm going to be doing Tales of the Valiant, the Hidden Tomb of Nargoth. I did not get into the MCDM game. I'm going to try and see if I can get a ticket for that still. And the D&D Open, and then a lot of time in the dealer hall. That dealer hall is amazing. If you get a chance to go to Gen Con, take it. It is amazing just for the dealer hall alone. Okay, and then let's talk about Sochcamp a little bit. So I talked about a little bit at the start, and share this tab. No spoilers here, so don't look at the screen. Turn on the sharing. Oh, it is shared. There we go. Okay, Lost Caverns of Sochcamp. Like I said, they did a really good job. I really liked kind of the streamlining they did. I love location-based adventures. I like adventures that are not heavy on text, not walls and walls of text. I mean, I would love to bring back adventures like they used to do, like the Giants. Like the Hill Giant adventure was 8 pages long, and it'd take you a good 2 or 3 sessions to play. And the Frost Giant, same way. And the Fire Giant, I think 16 pages long, and that'd take you like 4 sessions to play. And they're just jam-packed full of adversaries with various relationships and treasure and fantastical locations, and the story would unfold on its own, right? The players would make the story. And that's the kind of D&D that I like, for sure, especially with good players. All right. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks for watching, everyone. I will see you guys maybe next week with prepping for Gen Con. If not, in 2 weeks when I'll report back how Gen Con went. Thanks for watching, everyone.